Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for joining today's HUD Tribal Call regarding COVID-19. Before we begin, please ensure that you have opened the WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please do send a chat to the event producer. Also, if you would like to submit a question throughout the conference, please do submit the question in your chat box to the right side of your screen. To submit a question, right lower part of your screen, to submit a question, select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel. Enter your question in the message box provided and send. Please note, all audio connections are also muted at this time. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Hunter Kurtz, Assistant Secretary of Public and Indian Housing. Hunter, please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to speak with you. Again, my name is Hunter Kurtz. As you know, I'm the Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing. We really just want to take some time today and respond to your questions as it relates to COVID-19 and the impact it may have on your communities and housing programs. These are difficult and challenging times, but please remember that we are all in this together. No matter where you are in the country, we are all affected by COVID-19. While it's unlike anything we've experienced before, HUD is doing its best to ensure that our programs run smoothly and any challenges are addressed swiftly. I want you to all know that during this time, the safety and security of Native American families, tribal housing staff, and everyone living in Indian country is a top priority. We recognize that given the fluid nature of this epidemic, it's only natural for you and your staff to have questions regarding the safety of your tenants and community members. First, I want you all to know that the HUD team is diligently working to ensure that you will continue to have access to your funding and support from our staff to process our daily books of business. Second, our leadership team is engaged with the White House and our federal partners to provide and address issues as they arise, to develop action plans and respond to your concerns. Third, we are meeting daily to stay on top of the ongoing developments and getting information out as quickly as possible. The leadership at HUD is making this their top priority. To ensure effective communication, HUD has launched a HUD.gov/coronavirus, a new webpage geared toward providing the latest COVID-19 related information and resources for your communities. Additionally, if you haven't visited the Center for Disease Control website, I would encourage you to explore coronavirus.gov for specific health-related information. Today, I'm joined on the phone by my General Deputy Assistant Secretary, Dominic Bloom, Heidi Frechette, my Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Native Programs, Tony Walters, the Executive Director of the National American Indian Housing Council, and I appreciate them all being here, as well as a number of the directors from the Office of Native American Programs. And I'm going to turn the call over to Heidi, but again, thank you guys for what you all are doing out there, and thank you for joining us today. Heidi?
Great. Waywan, and thank you, Hunter, for the introduction and for your strong leadership through all of this. So everyone, Waywan, thank you for joining us. I'm Heidi Frechette. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Office of Native American Programs, and I'd like to echo Hunter's comments as well. The ONAP team is working diligently to address your questions and concerns, and most importantly, to ensure the safety and security of our tribal communities. So at this time, the majority of ONAP staff are working at alternate work sites due to the situation. But I do want to assure you that while the new ways of working has posed some challenges, we are still here day in and day out to help you and your communities, because we know now more than ever it is critically important to continue our public mission. And we know that protecting your tribal members and elders is of paramount importance at this time. So we're working quickly to address policy questions and identify waivers that will help you address COVID-19, utilizing your Indian Housing Black Grant, your ICDG, and your Section 184 programs. So please, please reach out to us as new challenges and issues arise. We are here to support you and help all tribal communities get through these challenging times. ONAP is also coordinating closely with the National American Indian Housing Council, and I'm very happy to say that we're joined today by Tony Walters, the Executive Director, of NAIHC. We're working closely with Tony and his team, as I said, to identify opportunities to better support you, TDHEs, and tribal housing departments and the communities during this crisis. So, Tony, I'm going to turn it over to you if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Hunter, and thanks, everyone, for joining. Again, my name is Tony Walters. I'm the Executive Director for National American Indian Housing Council. I certainly appreciate being on the call and helping you all at HUD and ONAP get the information out to tribes regarding all of these issues that we're facing now. It's pretty unprecedented times. So all of my staff will continue to work and be available. We're all teleworking as well, but I certainly want everyone on the call to know that we are available to help and certainly can answer questions and point tribes to resources that they may need to confront any of the issues that they're facing. So I just want to echo that, you know, these are unprecedented times. So certainly if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll certainly get you in touch with someone who can answer the question if not us. Obviously, a lot of our training and TA are being postponed as necessary and required by this, but we certainly want to remain available, and we're going to be happy to keep working with HUD to share all the information out that we can to all of our tribal housing members and professionals. So with that, I'll just turn it back over and certainly appreciate everyone's time this afternoon as we learn more about this.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. We appreciate your time and your partnership as well. And now I'd like to transition to discuss resources that are available for tribal housing practitioners. I've asked Jad Atala, ONAP's Director of Performance and Planning, to review our frequently asked questions as well as address some of the questions that came in prior to this call. Jad?
Hello, everybody. This is Jad Atala with ONAP. Thank you for being on this call. These are definitely tough times for everybody. We appreciate you calling in. I'm going to just do sort of a few things and then turn it over to you guys for questions. The first thing I want to do is just give you a quick reminder. If you have any questions during this call, please go ahead and type the questions in the chat box that you see on your screen. We will try to address them potentially on this call, and any questions we can address on this call, we'll go ahead and address them in writing and post them on our HUD website. The HUD website you've been hearing a lot about is hud.gov/coronavirus. We're trying to keep all the information we're sharing with all of our stakeholders on one website, so I encourage you to go visit that website if you haven't already. We've got a bunch of ONAP-related FAQs already posted, but I can tell you that we are constantly updating them, and we will be updating them on a rolling basis as we go along and sort of hear more and more issues from different folks who are struggling with this crisis right now. Okay, so before I get started on the FAQs, I will say there are FAQs that are written online, so please go ahead and look at them. I don't need to sort of necessarily repeat them word for word here, but I want to talk about just a few things that are going on at a high level and then some very frequently asked questions that we've been getting from all over the country from different tribes and TDHEs. So number one, I want to say before I get into that, the focus for you as tribal housing practitioners really needs to be the safety of your staff and your residents. And this is a time to always err on the side of safety of your staff and residents, and to the extent you're concerned about compliance with HUD regulatory requirements or standards, if those come at the expense of someone's life or safety or the life and safety of your staff, err on the side of protecting your staff and the residents. The second important thing to say is that we are here to help, and I really want to emphasize this. To the extent we can provide any sort of regulatory relief, whether it's processing waiver requests right now, we are here. We're willing to accept any requests you send us, review them, and if there's a basis and good cause to approve them, we will approve them if the purpose is to help you address this pandemic in your communities. So I encourage you to think about submitting regulatory waiver requests to address specific problems that may be preventing you from fully addressing the effects of this pandemic. The other thing I want to say is that our programs are also resources. The money and the funding that you may currently have can be used, can be reprogrammed to help address what's going on. If you look at our FAQs, we posted some general guidance on ways you can use the Indian Housing Block Grant for different activities. And at the same time, there are other resources. There's a guide right now on the use of CDBG funding for this pandemic. We're going to do an iCDBG companion guidance we'll put out soon, but CDBG guidance on the HUD coronavirus website is equally applicable. The last thing I'll say on that is 184 has loss mitigation options, and you should be looking hard at those. Our goal as a department right now and as a country is to, as the Secretary said, not have anybody become homeless right now under the current circumstances. Nobody should become homeless as a result of the coronavirus, so please re-emphasize that there's a lot of relief under our current programs. Here's a question we are getting constantly, and I want to address it, and we will put this out in writing and provide more guidance soon. So many tribes and TDHEs are asking us if residents right now can't pay their rent, are they required to evict them? The answer is no. Nobody should be getting evicted for failing to pay rent right now. Our current programs, like the Indian Housing Block Grant Program, is intentionally flexible and is a self-determination program that allows you to design your program locally. You are free to provide any sort of rent relief to anybody who can't pay rent right now because of the circumstances that we're going through. There's no reason for you to worry about to evict somebody out of fear that HUD is going to make a finding against you. You need to make sure that everybody, to the extent possible, is stably housed right now. That's the priority. Number two, when it comes to foreclosures, the FHA put out a couple of days ago a mortgagee letter that provided a moratorium on all foreclosures, initiation of foreclosures and eviction proceedings, and the suspension of those that are ongoing for FHA-insured loans. We've gotten a lot of questions about whether that applies to 184 and 184A. The answer is we're going to be putting something out very, very soon, but yes, our intent is to, in the near future, provide a similar kind of moratorium on those kinds of actions under our loan guarantee programs, 184 and 184A. When it comes to safety of staff, we are getting a ton of questions from people who are asking about whether they are required to send staff to do things like routine inspections or routine maintenance tasks, particularly if they're concerned, number one, about the safety of their staff going into units of people who could potentially be infected, or the staff wanting to quarantine themselves. I can tell you that right now the priority needs to be that only absolutely essential inspections and work need to be done when it comes to health and safety purposes. Other than that, your answer to all these questions needs to be protect your people, keep them at home, protect your residents. The only time maintenance staff should be going out really is to go out and do necessary repairs or work if there's a health and safety issue that compromises the residents themselves. Paying staff. I saw, it looks like we got a question in the chat box about that. We've recently gotten more guidance from the Office of Management and Budget recently on this particular question. It's coming up across the country. You can pay the salaries of your staff with your block grant funding. You should have current policies that allow for administrative leave. If you don't, we recommend you update your policies to do that. But go ahead and pay. You are allowed to pay the salaries and expenses of your staff if they are on emergency or admin leave because of the pandemic that we're in right now. So there's no reason for you to say, I can't pay my staff because HUD doesn't allow me to do so. They're sitting at home and HUD won't let me pay their salaries. Yes, you can pay their salaries. When it comes to regulatory relief, we are looking at things like allowing more KPR deadline extensions to be granted at the area ONAP level multiple times. We are going to let people get as much relief from things like financial reporting, performance reporting. OMB just came out with the guidance on that as well. The guidance that they put out also addresses your Single Audit Act, audits. if you, based on the guidance that came out yesterday, if your fiscal year ends anytime between now and June 30th, 2020, I think you automatically get a 6-month extension on your audit submission deadline. We just got this, so we're still kind of processing this OMB guidance, but I can tell you that there is regulatory relief coming, and we'll put out more stuff on this as we work through it. We're also looking at other stuff, other financial reporting requirements that we can address in the future, things like SF-425s and similar required reports. I want to mention that ONAP staff are teleworking, just like everybody else, like many of you, maybe all of you. So please bear with us. We're trying to, this is new for us, having the entire agency work from home. We're trying to do the best we can. To the extent you're having a tough time communicating with your ONAP staff in the area offices, please go ahead and email them, use electronic means. Don't rely on the physical mail right now. We are, as an agency, essentially basically teleworking entirely at this point. Okay, so those are kind of the general questions that aren't already addressed in the written Q&As that are published. I can certainly talk about the written Q&As, but I think you should just go to our website. They're all written up there, and I can tell you that we will continue to update those FAQs as time goes on a rolling basis. I cannot tell you how important it is, all the information you've provided us in our area offices and to NAIHC. The important information you provide on a rolling basis informs, number one, the FAQs we do, number two, the regulatory relief that we can provide to you, and number three, our sense of how this pandemic is playing out in Indian country. So I cannot tell you how important it is for you to continue to communicate with us. If you're having any sort of challenges with basic things like paying salaries or helping residents stay in their homes and be stably housed, or repairs or reporting or whatever it may be, income certification, talk to us, let us know. We will try to help you. If we need to issue regulatory relief, we'll do our best to do that within the bounds of the law, and we are here to help. So next I'm going to turn it back over to Neil, and then I guess we can look at some of these questions that are coming in on the chat.
Thanks, Jad. The first question we have reads, our annual performance report is due March 31st. Can we have an extension in submitting this report?
I can.
Or Jad.
Oh, go ahead, Gary.
Hi, this is Gary Nimick. I'm the Director of Grants Evaluation. As Jad pointed on, this is an ongoing process. We're making changes continually. But the answer to that question is absolutely. We have delegated authority down to the regional office to grant extensions 30 days at a time. So if your APR is due on March 31st, as long as you file an extension with them, and essentially filing an extension is sending your GE or GM specialist or the office an email requesting an extension because of the current situation. They can grant that extension, and then they can continue to grant extensions at 30-day increments. For those offices that are closed and don't have access to emails, as long as the local regional office is aware of the closure and has something to support it, they will likely send you an email reminding you of the deadline and offering to extend it. If the office is closed and nobody's responding, it's likely that they will automatically extend it. They've been given wide latitude in expanding the time that's necessary to deal with the APR. And as Jad said, we're looking at how we're going to deal with the quarterly financial reports, the SF-425s, and other matters that need to be reported.
Great. Thank you, Gary. I have one question that came in. This is Heidi, and I think it just came to me, so I will read it and then defer to Hunter. Will there be funds available to assist with the influx of additional requests to help with housing?
Sorry, I was
Hunter?
The mute button there was stuck. I mean, we're in conversations with Congress. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, Congress is the one who dictates funding. They control the purse strings, so they are, working on a number of funding measures, and we are in support of anything we can to help our residents, especially in tribal lands that need additional support in these times.
Great. Thank you, Hunter. Neil, do you have any other questions?
Yep, we've got several here in the chat. The next question, it reads, is it allowable for to use existing vacant CAST units as quarantine locations?
Jed, do you want to take it?
Sure. The answer is yes. CAST units are just like any other housing. If you have an immediate need to use them, they're vacant and you have an immediate need to use them for quarantining folks, absolutely. It's housing and you can use it for these purposes just like any other housing. Any potential impact on your FCAS funding is a different issue that we would have to look at. But as a general matter, as long as these units are operated as low-income dwelling units and are held out for that purpose, you qualify for FCAS funding. If there's a short temporary need to house folks for quarantine purposes, that's perfectly fine. Don't let the funding, if the possible funding impact, affect your decision to protect people and quarantine them.
Great. Thank you, Jed. Neil?
Okay. We have a follow-up question. They couldn't, participant couldn't understand what type of units are allowable to be used as quarantine units, and they asked for clarification.
The question was dealing with current assisted stock or formula current assisted stock, the old 1937 Act housing units that were developed before NAHASDA and have a certain funding treatment under the Indian Housing Block Grant formula. It's just another form of your housing stock that's available, and it is available if you need to quarantine people in them.
Great. Thank you, Jed. Neil?
Okay. The next question reads, how soon after the COVID-19 pandemic passes should tenants expect to pay the rent that was suspended?
So this is an issue I touched on in my initial remarks. Once again, you have discretion under our Indian Housing Block Grant program to provide maximum rent relief. So we're going to come out with something consistent with what the department has done in other programs, strongly encouraging tribes and TDHEs to provide maximum rent relief to everybody. If that means suspending or forgiving rent payments under the current circumstances, that is entirely up to you. It's not a HUD requirement, and we won't ding you for it on the monitoring side on the back end. So we strongly encourage you, if you have folks who can't pay rent because they can't get to their jobs and don't have an income coming in right now, it's not a HUD requirement that you still collect rent under our block grant program. You can provide the rent relief and forgive the rent payments or temporarily suspend the need to pay rent during this pandemic. So please go ahead and provide that relief. Don't wait for HUD to give you permission. You don't need HUD permission to do that now.
Chad, this is Hunter. I just want to add on, I think we've come out publicly and said this. The President said it. The Secretary said it. We're all asking, all of our the TDHEs, the THAs, the PHAs, everyone to use flexibility as much as possible to ensure that no one is evicted. We really don't want to see anyone evicted for not paying their rent right now because of something related to the coronavirus. So please, do what you can. You don't need our permission, but please do what you can to try to ensure that everyone has a place to live right now, because it's important.
Great. Thank you so much, Hunter. Neil, another question?
Yep, we have a few more in the chat here. The next question is related to low-income housing tax credits, and the question reads, will deadlines be extended for investors of low-income housing tax credit projects?
Unfortunately, we don't directly administer the low-income housing tax credit program. I think that's a question for the IRS. So I would encourage you to contact the IRS. It may also be a question for state housing finance agencies, depending on the nature of the question, but that's not something, unfortunately, that we can answer.
Okay. The next question is, what about the 80% income limit? Is that still in place?
So right now, the limit is still in place. Obviously, if you're low income, you're defined as being 80% of the area median income. That requirement is a standing requirement. I don't know if we've ever waived that kind of requirement, but if there is a public health need, that we certainly will consider any sort of proposal that you may put forward dealing with the 80%. Now, I should also say we have provisions in our program requirements that allow you to serve up to 10%, use up to 10% of your Indian Housing Block Grant to serve folks between 80 to 100% of AMI. And then you can also serve people over 100% of AMI with HUD approval. So, there are current rules in the program that allow you to serve people above 80% of AMI.
Okay. The next question reads, can non-IHBG funds be used for non-FCAS units? Example, water delivery, food assistance, or emergency plumbing issues.
So the question is, can non-IHBG funds be used for, sorry, repeat that last part.
For non-FCAS units. That's the way the question reads.
Right. So I think the intent here is to say by non-FCAS units you mean NAHASA units, quote unquote NAHASA units that are not formula current assisted stock, but it's current stock. Yes, absolutely. You can use other sources of funding, federal and non-federal funding, to provide assistance to non-FCAS units. There's no prohibition against that.
Okay. The next question reads, is there an extension at the Formula Center for tribes to make changes?
That's a good question. It depends on what exactly is being asked in terms of the specific deadline, but we will certainly consider any possible extensions that we need to provide for the formula process.
Yeah, so if folks have more specific examples, if they could submit that, that would be helpful for us.
Okay. We have a few more questions in the chat. The next question reads, can we pay hazard pay to those required to work during the pandemic?
I think you have to look at the Part 200 rules. I believe there is some provisions in there dealing with, regular written policies addressing hazard pay and the allowability of those. We would have to look at those. I don't have them memorized off the top of my head, but I believe you probably can. We just have to check that. So we can provide probably a written response to that one to confirm.
Okay. The next question reads, will a TDHE get reimbursed for purchases of electronic devices, laptops, Surface Pros, not currently in inventory, and Wi-Fi purchased during this pandemic?
I think the answer to that question is it depends on what this equipment is being used for. If this is equipment that is being used to assist the Tribe or TDHE carry out specific eligible activities under the program, administer its program. That's normal equipment that would be eligible to be paid with your block grant. So if you're going to purchase that kind of equipment, as long as you're using it to administer your program and do necessary functions and carry out eligible activities, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. The next question is about evictions, and the question reads, what is the recommendation if eviction proceedings started prior to the pandemic and the date is approaching that was pre-existing and not related to the coronavirus?
I think given the public health emphasis on sheltering in place in many communities and on social distancing and preventing homelessness at a time like this, or even housing instability, we don't have I think our recommendation would be to consider extending these, providing a stay for these kinds of eviction proceedings to prevent somebody from becoming homeless. I don't know if that's the right recommendation in situations where someone else's safety is at issue. If you have somebody who is a domestic violence abuser and you're concerned about the safety of residents, I don't know if we've put out anything specifically recommending what to do in that case. But I would say right now the answer is nobody should be getting evicted under the current circumstances. I don't know, Hunter.
Jed, I was going to say, as Jed had said, these are ever-evolving situations with these kind of different scenarios popping up. So thank you for sharing that, and we can look at that in a little more detail because that's something that we're already looking into, and we can give a clear answer on hopefully in the next couple of days.
Okay, we have a few more questions in the chat. The next question reads, and this is a follow-up from a prior question about non-FCAS units. The question reads, can IHBG funds be used for private non-FCAS units, example, food assistance, water delivery, repairs?
If the residents, right now under the current rules, if the residents in those private units are low-income Native American families who aren't assisted, that's a housing service that you can provide. It's an eligible activity, and the block grant funding can be used for those purposes. The Indian CDBG program also allows for that kind of public service, Meals on Wheels, those kinds of services. You could probably do it under the Indian Housing Block Grant under housing services as well. But again, the residents who are being assisted in these private units have to be eligible. They have to be low income and Native American. Those are the current rules.
We have a follow-up question about hazard pay. The question reads, are there any TDHE or tribal housing authorities currently providing hazard pay to your knowledge?
We know of plenty of tribes and TDHEs that have communicated with us who have asked the question of, can they pay people's salaries while they're on administrative leave? I know we have many, not many, but we have some folks who have found the need to go out and do emergency repairs. Those folks are probably getting some sort of pay that's maybe potentially beyond what they normally get paid. I don't know what kind of pay they're getting, so again, this is one where I think we should take back and provide a written response to. If there are any on the webinar that know or are doing this now, I would recommend you type it into the chat box and let us know. Maybe others are doing.
Yeah, and this is Heidi. Tony, do you have any insight into this? Have you heard from any of the tribes, TDHEs on this hazard pay issue?
No, we haven't got any questions about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question here in the chat box, and just as a reminder, if you have a question, please submit it in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. The next question reads, should quarantine signs be posted on rental units for tenants?
I'm really not sure about that question. I would say follow the local directive of whatever is happening in your state and in your community. If there's you're seeing even today governors now, New York, California, and now Illinois, issuing orders for people to stay at home. So this is just a fluid, evolving situation. To the extent you're in one of those communities, I would say definitely have everybody quarantine or at least minimize contact and engage in social distancing. I don't know if HUD is going to tell you have to post signs, particularly if that requires people going out and posting signs.
Jad, hey, Jad.
Yeah, and I would just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Hunter.
No, I was just going to say that I think this is really sort of brings up a good point, like that you all need to ensure that you're following, local, state, or tribal health department recommendations on these types of things. They're the experts on what should or shouldn't be taking place, and I would defer questions like that to again, your local, state, or tribal health department.
Great. Yes, that's what I was going to say, Hunter. I echo those thoughts. And, for some of the more health-related practices, the CDC website is very informative as well.
Okay.
Neil,
we have a few more
questions. Okay.
Yeah, we have a few more that have just come up in the chat. One person provided just a comment that their organization has used hazard pay for meth cleanup in the past. And then we have a question here. Will there be any recommendations on providing repairs to homes that are being quarantined?
I'm not sure at this point, but if there are folks who are being quarantined in homes, the obvious answer is you probably need to be doing the absolute minimum amount of necessary work. Quarantine means you're quarantined, so don't let HUD requirements on maintaining homes and repairing homes get in the way of people properly quarantining. As Hunter said, on questions about the technical aspects and the health aspects of this, definitely defer to the experts. We're not the experts. But if you're concerned about HUD requirements for doing repairs and maintenance and someone is being quarantined in a home, the answer is don't worry about the HUD requirements right now. Let them quarantine.
Okay. Sort of as a follow-up, we have another question. If IHB maintenance staff are working in units, do we have access to HUD-provided masks or safety suits?
So obviously, we don't provide that kind of equipment directly. We provide funding to tribes and TDHEs, which then can use the funding to purchase that equipment. Our FAQs that we posted last week do have a reference that says that you can use your Indian Housing Block Grant funds to provide personal protective equipment. That includes things like masks and gowns and gloves and other protective gear that you need. So you can use your block grant funding to purchase that kind of equipment. That's particularly important if you have maintenance staff who have to do emergency repairs and have to go out to units and you're worried about infection spreading, any sort of contamination, the safety of your staff and the residents.
And I would really follow the lead, as Hunter said, of your tribal health departments, and also on CDC website that we've shared the link for has some good guidelines and recommendations as far as, best practices in this regard. So, again, look to the health folks. HUD is a self-governance program, so as Jed said, we put the funding out for you all to use how you need to serve your communities. We don't do direct on-the-ground services like Indian Health Service or here because all of our programs are self-governance programs. So in that vein, it's really getting you the resources to be able to do what you need to do in your community to address this issue.
Okay. We have a few more questions that have come up. The next question reads, is there a source of federal relief funds that tribes or TDHEs can access to provide emergency food or other supplies to tenants or other community members?
Once again, I think that some of these activities are currently eligible under our current programs as housing services, both under the Indian Housing Block Grant Program and the ICDBG program. These are called housing services under IHBG and public services under Indian CDBG. Again, generally these should be provided to low-income Native American families who are eligible for this assistance at this point. In terms of new sources, I don't know, like Hunter says, we're talking to Congress right now about additional funding potentially. They make the decisions. There may be other agencies that can provide this kind of relief. That's kind of, I don't know, Heidi, if you want to add to that at all.
No, I was going to say, I think what we're doing, what tribes are doing right now is to find out what other programs and relief is available through the other agencies. And also, as Hunter and Jad pointed out, pursuing additional funding for housing-related things as well. So I would say, you know, keep abreast of what other agencies are doing. We will try to do our best to. If we find out about other opportunities through other agencies, we will definitely share them with you as this evolves and we become aware of more programs available for tribes in general.
There's one more thing I want to emphasize. We, under the Indian Housing Block Grant Program, are authorized to approve model activities, and those are activities that you guys come up with, you propose them. If we determine that they are in furtherance of the purposes of NAHASDA, we can approve them, and when we approve them, those activities become eligible under NAHASDA. If there are any, I can't emphasize this enough, if there are any ideas for you using your funds that could protect your residents, protect the community, serve low-income Native American families, help address this pandemic, and protect the safety of folks, we are all ears. Submit those model activity proposals. We will look at them, expedite them, and if there's a basis, we will approve them. And when we approve them, you'll be able to use your Indian Housing Block Grant funds for these purposes. So for a bunch of these questions that are maybe on the line, maybe unclear as to whether funds can be used for a specific purpose, talk to your area ONAP folks, and if the answer is we're not really sure, submit a model activities proposal, make a case that it's in furtherance of NAHASDA, and we'll approve it.
Great. I think we have time for one or two more questions, Neil.
Perfect. Yep, we have a few that have come in by email as well, so let me read this one. The next question reads, how long are we going to be able to pay employees? Has HUD provided a time frame?
We haven't provided a time frame. Like I said, OMB came out with guidance just yesterday saying that, that under grant programs across the federal government, if a grant program allows you to pay salaries and people are sitting at home because they can't work under the current circumstances, administrative leave is a eligible expense under the uniform Part 200 grant requirements across federal grant programs. So until we hear otherwise, I think adjust your policies if you need to. Your policies are supposed to reflect this kind of thing. But if your policies allow for administrative leave or emergency leave under a pandemic or something similar, a disaster, an emergency, something along those lines, I think you can continue to pay salaries for folks until you hear otherwise.
Okay. We have
Thanks, Chad. Neil, I just want to jump in here. I see one question that asks about a summary of this call, if it will be provided. We will have this posted, I believe, for at least a week after the call, so folks can rewatch this. It's being recorded right now. Okay, Neil.
Perfect.
Last question.
Perfect. Yep, we have a couple that just came in, and just as a reminder, as Jad mentioned earlier, questions that we're unable to get to, we'll use to help inform future frequently asked questions. So the next question reads, do we need a resolution by our board to suspend rent?
So that's a local question. HUD can't answer that. You have to look at your current local tribal laws, whether it's bylaws, procedural stuff, and decide what the answer is. That's not a HUD requirement. To the extent you can expedite your local procedural requirements to address this pandemic, we encourage you to do so, but that's a local question.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. So we've heard about APR deadlines. This question came in through Code Talk, and the question reads, our IHP deadline is April 17th. Will there be an extension for IHP deadlines as well?
That's a good question. We have discretion under the Nahaza statute to give people up to 90-day extension on IHPs. I don't know if we can give a blanket extension for all IHPs. We can certainly look into it, but I would say if your IHP deadline is approaching, submit just an email or written request to your area ONAP office asking for an extension right now before the deadline. We will, under the current circumstances, if you look at the criteria in the statute, we obviously meet it. We grant these routinely. So we will grant IHP extensions, but the safe thing to do is to ask for an extension now. Don't wait for HUD to grant a blanket one. I'm not sure if we can right now.
Hi, Chad. This is Gary. You mentioned a written request. Just so everybody knows, nobody is in the HUD offices, so to the fullest extent that you can, send these type of requests through email.
Great, thank you. And I believe we're getting towards the end of the call. As Neil said, we have some other questions that came in that we didn't get to, and we will be answering those through the FAQs as we move along. There's a lot of good questions, so thank you to everyone for submitting some very thoughtful questions. As I said, and Hunter said, and Jad, this is fast-moving. We're getting new guidance every day, and so we will do our best to get that information out to you and respond to your questions and inquiries as we receive them. We're all committed to turning things around because we know that you all are dealing on the ground with some very serious challenges. So please know we're working hard, and we want to hear from you as well, as Jad said. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Assistant Secretary for Public and Indian Housing, Hunter Kurtz, for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, everyone, for your great questions. I know this is some difficult times, and I appreciate everyone's hard work. Like I said in the beginning, we're doing really good work out there for a lot of great people, and I appreciate it. I just, want to say that we'll probably do another call like this again in the future, just to sort of talk about and get some more questions from you all and provide you all with some more feedback. But I appreciate it. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. Take care, and please stay safe.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.